Hello and welcome to this month's Creatrix Conversations. We are talking today about wisdom ways to honor death and change. And I know this isn't necessarily a happy topic or a comfortable topic for many, so I really honor each and every one of you who tunes in live today or anyone watching the replay. Thank you for your willingness to lean in and explore and to discuss some of these wisdom ways for you to honor death and change in your life. Please say hi in the comments when you join. Love to see you. Who's on here? I'm going to be watching the comments on my second device here. Okay, wonderful. So if you're new to me or this community, first of all, welcome. My name is Flora Ware, and I am the hostess of this Facebook group. I am the founder of Earth Song Temple, and it has been my absolute pleasure and privilege to steward this sacred online space for 7 years. 7 years. I'm a ceremonial priestess, a sacred musician, and a cyclic living teacher. My practices are based in Celtic, earth-based spirituality, and with that, coming from that framework, death, the decline and death phase of the life cycle is honored just as much as the inception and the growth and the maturation phase of the life cycle. And we're in November, and so here in the Northern Hemisphere, we are in that seasonal decline, the energetic decline. We are in the season of Samhain, which is the gateway to winter. So it is timely, which is why I aligned this topic with this season. Hello, Katya. Hello, Helen. Wonderful. Welcome, welcome. Yes, it is so rewarding to let go of what no longer serves. So to be clear, I'm going to be speaking about death today, both in in the physical sense of when there is a death, someone that we know and love, but also symbolic deaths. And that's why I said ways to honor death and change, because change, rebirth, transformation, it all requires a symbolic death as well. So before we really jump into the conversation, I would like to share this poem. And it is from Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, which is one of the first spiritual texts that I read as a teenager, and it had a profound impact for me, on me. And this is his piece on death. We would ask now for you to speak of death. And he said, you would know the secret of death, but how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day cannot unveil the mystery of light. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. And like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate to eternity. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd when he stands before the king whose hand is to be laid upon him in honor. Is the shepherd not joyful beneath the trembling that he shall wear the mark of the king? Yet is he not more mindful of his trembling? For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you have reached the mountaintop, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth shall claim your bones, then shall you truly dance. So taking in those potent words about death and really what it means from a spiritual perspective, that this mystery of death really lies at the core of our human experience, something that we fear because we don't understand, we don't know. And of course, none of us truly know what happens when we die. None of us truly understand really what happens, how we are born. And at those two thresholds, the gateway of life and the gateway of death, is when we're in closest contact to the great mystery. And anyone who has been present at a birth or a death can attest to this. So at this time of year, it's aligned, it's resonant to spend some time thinking. We see it in nature around us, the sacred decay, the declining energy, and it serves us to give thoughts to our ancestors and our beloved dead, those that are no longer with us. And we're also in the astrological sun sign right now of Scorpio. Many of you know that I just had a birthday. I am a Scorpio. And so death and sex which results in birth and new life, sex and death are very Scorpio themed. So perhaps this is the reason that for me, death has never really been a taboo topic. Neither is sex. But this is why that today I'm stepping into this role as death priestess to open up these discussions. And thank you for the comments. I'm really these Creatrix conversations are just that. They're meant to be conversations and discussions. Oh, nice. So someone's going to tune back in. Yeah, it is. It's such a beautiful poem. If you have never read The Prophet, like as in not like Prophet, highly, highly recommend that spiritual text. So any change requires some death, a symbolic death. And I think it's equally important for us to acknowledge the symbolic deaths and the big life changes that we go through, as well as the physical deaths. And um, you know, we're all well acquainted with the metaphor of the caterpillar and the butterfly, right? The caterpillar must die to become the butterfly, and yet it's a beautiful metaphor because it's a clearly shows that it's a rebirth, that after death there is always regeneration of something, especially in the natural world. right? Last week in our Samhain ceremony on the Day of the Dead, I was speaking about the compost pile, about that, and I was saying that non-gardeners sometimes don't understand the appeal of compost. um, and yet it's the compost is this transformative alchemical cauldron for gardeners. So we throw what's no longer needed, what's no longer alive, right? We throw that onto the compost pile and it is transformed, and it gets the material gets regenerated into rich compost, which fertilizes the new growth. So it's a beautiful analogy. And of course, since my name is Flora, I do love a good gardening analogy. Oh, wonderful, Claire. It was one of your first spiritual texts to the prophet. Yeah. Yes, compost and death and life. It is. It's the perfect cycle. Really, I believe nature teaches us everything that we need to know about life and death and rebirth. And and so last week in the Samhain ceremony, I was pointing out most of you will have my cyclic living guide. If you don't, I'll put the link in the comments. This is my free gift. And you get this printable and an 8-page guide, plus a companion Google Calendar if you're into Google Calendar. But right now in the season of Samhain, this is, oh, it's too reflective. Anyway, this is the season of release. So this is the theme that we're working with, release, until Yule at the winter solstice. So if we want change, right? Who wants some change in their life? Or who here just wants everything in their life to stay exactly the same? Who here wants everything out in the world to stay exactly as it is right now? Anyone here? Anyone here want everything to stay just exactly the same in their life or the world right now? I'm willing to bet no. Because not only do we desire change, yes, please, more change. Change, please. Thank you. Oh, hello, Pauline. I'm really touched that you showed up today, sister. um, Not only do we desire change, it's a natural impulse. Um, Change is inevitable. All there is ceaseless change. And the archetype of the queen of death, if you will, the archetype of death, that's the medicine to make peace with ceaseless change and to lean into the ceaseless change with grace through trust. So, right now, well, actually, pause. 7 years ago, in November of 2016, I had a miscarriage, an early term miscarriage. Um, Ironically, the literal day before Trump was elected in the United States. So it was a really shitty week for me. Um, so I experienced this loss and I grieved that death. And that was a really interesting grieving for me because I was grieving something and someone that had never actually been. I was grieving a hope, a dream. So sometimes we even experience symbolic death for the things that never came to pass. And so I share my story about my miscarriage 7 years ago for that very reason, and that it's okay if you're grieving things that were never actually came to be. Right now, I'm going through another big life change. We've sold our house, moving into another, lots going on, and I'm doing my best to stay very present and to consciously say goodbye to the old chapter so that it feels complete, so that I can be reborn into the new chapter. Um, and we have to willingly let the old parts of us die when we are going through a big change for us to be reborn. So you may be grieving. You may be grieving right now if you're here tuning in. And I want to offer you well, my condolences and my love that it's it's a circuitous path of healing grief, and definitely a time to be very, very compassionate and gentle with yourself. So today I'm going to be sharing eight or nine different ways, wisdom ways that we can honor death and change in our life. And a lot of these are very practical things that you can actually do. Some of them are more contemplations that you can think about, or conversations that you can have with significant people in your life. And before I get into that, I just also want to say that our November goddess, our goddess this month is Hecate. And she is the Greek goddess of the crossroads, goddess of witchcraft, of the night, and she's the wise woman, the crone. She lights and guides your way when you are at a crossroads in life, and so right now I just want to very simply invoke Hecate to be with us here now and to lend us, to share her wisdom of death with us. Hail and welcome, Hecate. So, the first the first way to honor death and change, and more about the physical, actual deaths that we may be grieving or honoring. And this is one that we spoke a lot about in October, of course, leading up to Samhain. The first way is to have or build an ancestor's altar. And thank you to the few that shared photos of your ancestors' altar around Samhain. It's always so beautiful and inspiring to see. And this is not just a practice for Samhain, right? Many people have an ancestors' altar up year round, or a wall of photos of of relatives and ancestors on the wall that acts as an ancestors' altar year round. And if you've never build an ancestor's altar, some people I've learned can feel a bit overwhelmed by the process. Sometimes even just saying the word altar. People think that it needs to be a big, elaborate um, altar, basically. It doesn't. An ancestor's altar could be one, two framed photos, uh, an old pipe that you might have from your grandfather or great grandfather, or some object, a necklace. Um, that could be it. If that's all you have, or if that's simply the ancestors that you're wanting to connect with and honor, that is fine, right? Um, right now, yes, it is uh, a very time, an aligned time for ancestor work. But I want to mention that it's always a good time to honor the ancestors. Every day is a good day to honor the ancestors. So I'd love to hear in the comments um, if this is a practice that you've done before, if this is a current practice, anything that you would like to share about having an ancestor's altar. Um, there's again, right now, uh, everything is packed up, but I specifically put everything for our ancestors' altar into one box, and I actually brought it out on Samhain, and we just went through the photos and the objects, and I shared them with my son, who's 10, and I tried to tell a few stories. I tried to tell him, oh, this is who this is, um, and just to remember them. And it was very simple. It was not elaborate or drawn out, and yet it was still meaningful and important. It was still important. Um, yes. So another way. So the second way to work with death wisdom around someone that has passed is, again, this is a traditional Samhain practice, but It's called a dumb supper, meaning dumb as in mute, where you're setting a place for an ancestor at the table. And again, this is something that you could do at any time, especially on a significant date with a particular ancestor, maybe their birth date, maybe their death date, right? Um, that's something that you could think of, just having an extra setting at the table and inviting them to join you, inviting that ancestor. And again, it could be a specific ancestor, or it could be a more general invitation to all your ancestors, that this extra setting is an invitation to your ancestors to join us. Another spin on this, which is again more year round, I learned this from a priestess sister, that she calls it coffee with her ancestors. So every morning with her morning coffee, she sits and drops into a meditative space and enjoys her morning coffee and converses spiritually with her ancestors. And some days she says someone specific shows up, and she's quite um, she's quite psychic, so she'll actually have conversations. I'll admit I'm a little jealous with people who say they can do that. Being more clairsentient, right? Like I more feel sensations, right? Um, but sometimes it's just a feeling, right? And it's a daily honoring. So again, find a practice that works for you. Find a practice that works for you. Sister shares, I have my mom, dad, and my dog's photos on my traveling altar wherever I go. I love seeing them every day. That's beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. So, a third way, so the third way, wisdom way to honor death and change in your life, specifically around um, actual deaths, is, and especially if it's fresh, right? But not necessarily, but to write them a letter, to write an ancestor a letter, someone that you um, feel a need to connect with, or to process anything that was left unsaid before their death. Write them a letter, and or go for a walk, and again, just have more of an intuitive conversation with them. Um, it will it will show them in the spirit world that you're still thinking with them, you're thinking of them, and that you want to energetically be with them. You could maybe ask their opinion on something if you're wanting to, um, or you could be sharing life news that's happening now with them. My soul grandmother, who I call my soul grandmother because she's like an adopted grandmother, so not related by blood. Um, I still really miss being able to call her up and have the spiritual conversations that we used to have. And I'm actually still needing to get myself in the habit of knowing, of rewiring that thought that, like, oh, I can't talk to her anymore. I'll admit I'm still rewiring that. It's like, oh yeah, no, I can still have a spiritual conversation with her. So to quickly recap, the first wisdom way is having an ancestor's altar. The second is to have an extra setting at the table for them on a specific night or just in general, or morning coffee or tea with the ancestors. And the third wisdom way is writing a letter or engaging in a spiritual conversation with them. And so now getting into more of the symbolic death with death, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it's time to take a sip of water. How's everyone doing? Mm. This letter is a great idea. My mom recently passed, and a grief book I'm reading suggests something similar to complete the relationship and not stay in a painful place. Yeah, so that's beautiful. And certainly if there is anything left unsaid, um, writing that letter, burning it, or tearing it up, uh, it is. A great thing to do. Okay, so the fourth wisdom way to work with death and change in your life. Some of you are going to go, write your obituary. Hmm. Isn't that a fun journaling exercise? Hey, write your own obituary. And you want to, of course, write your obituary in the way that you want the legacy of your life to be. It can be a great exercise working even with manifestation in that, like quantum future manifestation. It's a spin on some law of attraction principles, right? But what would you want your obituary to say? It's a great exercise. Someone else at one point said, well, it doesn't need to be obituary. You could think of it as like writing your Wikipedia entry or something. And I'm like, yeah, but today we're talking about death wisdom. At the end of your life, you can't take any physical possession that you've acquired with you. It's all just stuff. So, what is the true legacy that you want to leave with your life? How do you want to be remembered? Number 5, again, really fun suggestions for you to talk to your spouse or your partners or your best friend about your wishes upon your death. Or just even opening up a conversation if you're this kind of person. What do you think happens after death? I always love that conversation, hearing what people think. But in terms of that, you know, um, how does it make you feel when I say that? Like, do you just not even want to acknowledge that one day you will die? You don't want to acknowledge it to the point of like actually having a bit of a plan with your nearest and dearest? No judgment, just noticing that for yourself. Um, just making sure that the people closest to you know what your wishes are. Right? My family all knows that I want to be cremated, and my ashes, most of my ashes. It's fine if anyone wanted to keep a little urn of my ashes, but I want to go into Kalamalka Lake. It's one of my sacred spots. And so this is it's a, you could even also go so far with this is, do you have a will? And, especially if you have children, young children, might be something that you want to consider. I know it's a whole legal process and it's not fun. We did it when our son was born because that helped us feel good, knowing that if anything ever happened to us, we knew that he was going to be taken care of and that what we wished to happen was going to be carried out. And to know who your executor is. Okay, number 6 is to talk to your parents, if they're still alive, about what their wishes are for their death. Again, so that there's no wondering. And so having that conversation with your parents, and especially, do they have a legal will? Has one of your parents or both of them made you the executor of their will? Well, then you should know about that, right? You might not want to be the executor of their will. It's a very emotional time. So these are good conversations to not avoid the reality that death is coming for us all. Um, and unless you're estranged from your parents and that there isn't much of a relationship there, right? But anyone that's elderly and that you really care for in your life, this is an invitation for you to dare to open up the conversation and to know what their wishes are. You may think that you know, and then you may have that conversation and it may just confirm that you knew what their wishes were. But what if you're actually really surprised about something and that you're going to be glad that you know? Agreed. No wondering. After my mom died, it was apparent that these decisions made beforehand were such a blessing to those who are caring for the details. It is a lot of work. I've talked it over with my husband. Yeah. Really feeling you, sister, in this recent loss of your mom. And I know others here that have recently lost a parent or a loved one. The legal matters after a death should hopefully be easy, and unfortunately it's not, because there's already so much to deal with emotionally. Okay. Number 7, another wisdom way to honor death. This is more about honoring change. Okay, so number 7, a wisdom way to honor change is through rites of passage. Now, anyone that's been around me and in my world for a while, I know I'm very passionate about the loss of the rites of passage in our society and how detrimental that has been to our collective psyche and soul. So, if there is a menopausal woman in your life that is entering into her crone years, what about a croning ceremony or some kind of croning party? A crone party. And the age for that is variable. Some people feel ready to embrace crone like by 55. Others feel that there's a whole other archetype in there. I do personally. I especially since we're living longer, but the maiden mother crone, the original triple goddess, uh, mystery school, if you will. The rites of passage for women were around the first blood, becoming a maiden, at the becoming a mother, the blessing of the mother, and then at the end, they're all tied into our blood mysteries as women. So honoring the blood mysteries, is there a crone that wants to have a party that in some way you could honor that together and honor that life change, right? I'm not there yet, but I have many wonderful women, mentors, and friends that are in my life that are past menopause, or in the throes of menopause, um, and honoring that life passage. Again, that when these taboo subjects that we don't talk about and we get all awkward about, let's break the taboo. Here we are. We're talking about death. Talk about menopause with your friends that are going through it. Um, this those are the wise woman years. The wise woman years. All right, number 8. Another suggestion for you at this time of year and working with this energy is to spend time with your elders. And again, this could be blood relatives, or it could be chosen family. Um, so whether it's in person or it's picking up the phone and calling your grandmother that you've been meaning to call but haven't, I still have some regret. I still have some regret of not calling my soul grandmother that I mentioned earlier on Christmas. Uh, when did she pass? Yeah, maybe it was about 7 or 8 years ago. I didn't call her on Christmas. I wanted to. I was thinking of her. I didn't. I thought it was fine. And on December 27th, she was admitted to hospital for pneumonia, and she died on December 29th. So I lost that chance for that phone call. So if there's an elder in your life, right, make that effort, take that step, and listen to their stories. Let them share their stories. Um, you never know when it's going to be the final visit. And again, like I said, this can be chosen family, or it could be a beautiful neighbor, a friend. Again, you might be estranged from your blood family, or or someone actually a friend that I was just with a couple days ago. I said, "How are you?" She said, "Oh, I'm okay. Although my grandfather died," and I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." She's like, "It's okay. He was a horrible person." Oh, okay. She's like, "So I'm sad for my mother, but I haven't had a relationship with him for 15 years." So we all know that there can be very complex family dynamics, right? So I'm not saying to call a grandparent who was abusive. I'm not saying to call up, you know, your narcissistic, verbally abusive, just because I'm going to spend time with my elders. No, don't put yourself into harm's way. But this is the invitation. Because think about when you're an elder. Karma, right? Paying it forward. Back to these comments that I'm just seeing come in. My dad had very specific wishes before he passed, and it was cathartic in many ways to know and to be able to truly honor what he wanted. There was no guessing, and he was at peace knowing things would be as he wished. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. And how did I know, Wendy, that you were going to jump in on that part of the conversation? I felt you, sister, about the additional archetype. So um, it is a different energy to the crone. So just you can see Wendy's comment there if you're reading, but traditional, like I said, is the maiden mother crone, and um, I would imagine that when our lifespan was 40 years, if we were lucky, that is about 45 years. I just recently turned 46, so I would be a crone already at this point. Like we're talking hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, right? So with our expanded lifetimes and with our expanding consciousness, I believe there it has been a movement, there's been a lot of discussion that we now have extra time and also more freedom and opportunity to explore different archetypal energies that have not always been available to us as women. So maiden mother queen crone or maga crone is one of them. Oh, thank you. Fourth, being also the priestess. So priestess, queen, someone who's very much in her authority and personal sovereignty. Um, so there's play there, right? This isn't a hard and fast. This is the way it is, right? um, but we're not really here to talk about archetypes. Not today. Okay, and finally, number nine. Number nine. Number nine. A wisdom way to work with death wisdom in your life is to write down all the symbolic deaths that you have experienced in the last year, maybe, or however long you want to look back at. Um, and to journal on all the ways that you have experienced those big changes in your life and what symbolically died, and then also looking at what was reborn, what came out of that change, right? So that you can see it very clearly. um, and think of this as holding a funeral for your past self. I'm very excited about this ritual idea. I feel like I've done it in different ways, but that I haven't yet fully done it with this awareness. So I'm excited to share this with the community. Um, to hold a funeral for your past self, honoring your past self for all that you learned and all the ways that you have grown, and lovingly letting go of all the ways of thinking, thought patterns, the ways of being, self-destructive behaviors, right? Whatever it is. Thinking about all of that and lovingly letting all of that go with this funeral for your past self so that the new you is reborn. Oh, thank you, Katya. So Katya is actually already answering a question that I didn't ask yet. You're very psychic, sister. I would love to hear now which of these are feeling very resonant for you. Um, but I think I'm also gonna sit with this last one a little bit more. Most of you know that I'm very elemental with my magic. So I always intuitively feel into what element I want or that I'm feeling the most called to work with, whether it's fire, water, earth, or air, or spirit, I guess, right? Ether, so the five elements of the pentacle. For this funeral for your past self, of course, you could presence and honor them all. But I mean, is there a way that do you want to do a burning ritual? Or do you want to do this funeral for your past self by running water and maybe offer something into the water that is carried away? Do you want to bury something in the ground, right? Actually having a burial, burying something. Um, do you want to go somewhere on a mountaintop and be in the wind and the air and just letting it go to the air or something? So I encourage you to always feel into the elemental resonance. Okay. Um, yeah, and right now, yes, I wanted to also presence that we are in the waning moon. We are in the dark of the moon, heading into the Scorpio new moon next Monday. So if any of these, especially the personal rituals, if any of these are feeling really resonant, I encourage you to do them in the next 4 or 5 days because it'll be very aligned. Rituals of release, banishment rituals, right? They're very aligned with that lunar phase energy of the waning, the end of the cycle, the letting go. But like I also always say, you can work your magic anytime, right? You can work your magic anytime. All right, so to recap, um, okay, now I have to pick up my notes. To recap, the um, the first, yes, yes. The first one is the ancestors' altar. The second wisdom way is either having an extra setting at the table for an ancestor or having a drink with your ancestors in the morning or a specific ancestor, coffee, or later in the evening it could be a whiskey or something, maybe one of your grandfathers that you're wanting to connect with. That's a really interesting correspondence as well, especially for a known ancestor. If you know that Irish whiskey was your grandfather's favorite drink, well, to connect with him, you can work with that as a magical correspondence. Or if your great grandmother always used rose water on her face, you could put rose water on your face and have tea with your great grandmother and work with that correspondence. Think about things like that. Like, what are ways to really invoke? Okay, number 3, writing them a letter or going for a walk and having a telepathic communication with them in the spirit world. Number 4, writing your obituary, thinking about the legacy that you want to leave. Number 5, talking to your significant others about your wishes upon your death. Number, wait, yeah, that was number 5. Number 6, talking to your parents about their wishes on their death or any other elder that you care for, right? What are their wishes? Number 7, to see if there's a crone in your community, in your circle. Is there someone who could be honored with a crone celebration? And number 8 is spending time with your elders and making that effort if you maybe haven't in a while. um, and and again, maybe daring to open up the conversation about death, since they may want to talk about it and may feel like no one will talk to them about death. And it can be comforting. It can be very comforting. And number 9 is to hold a funeral for your past self. A real honoring of your past self to allow the rebirth. Okay, beautiful. I just want to come back to these comments. 2 and 9 very much resonate. Beautiful, sister. Okay, and more conversation about what that, yeah, the matriarch, the Maga. Nice. Yeah, I know. I know, Claire. Okay. Um, all right, my love. So I hope that this has served you in some way, and I welcome continued comments on the replay. And one final thing I want to say is that coming back to Goddess Hecate, thank you for being with us here, that if you are curious about working further with Goddess Hecate and other goddesses, you may be interested in my Goddess Meditation Bundle. That is not it. Hang on, I put the wrong link. Okay, you know what? I'm going to put that link in there too. Okay, if anyone wants my free cyclic living guide, so that is my free gift, and that is the Wheel of the Year chart that outlines the 8-phase lunar solar creation cycle, right? And then this is the, nope, that's not it. Okay. Wish I had this link ready, but it's okay. Thank you for your patience. There we go. This Archetypal Awakening Bundle has 7 guided meditations in it with 7 different archetypes and goddesses. And you also get a journal guide and an info guide with it. And you can use the coupon code 7OFF, just like that, 7OFF, to get $7 off. If you are interested in that meditation bundle today. Oh, you are so welcome. Thank you so much. And again, I just, yeah, beaming all of you with so much love, especially all of you with grieving hearts, anyone who is holding grief. And just may you continue to remember that love is the reason for your grief in most cases. And so it's still so bittersweet and sad. And yet the reason you are grieving is because you loved and you shared love. And that is a beautiful, precious thing. Yes, much love to all. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And blessed, blessed be. Thank you for honoring death and change in your life. Bye for now.